Welcome to 7 Kinds of Mischief. Oh, shit. Hello, kitties. Shit. How are you guys doing tonight? Good evening, Adega.
Good evening. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Good evening to the chat. Purple Valkyrie, good evening. And someone tries to call me right as I go live. Martha Emily Tired. Good evening, Dee Dee Myers. Good evening, Project Storytime. Dal Cecil Runo. Lady Miss the Guardian of the Void is here, ladies and gentlemen. Pod Racing Palpatine. Good evening, everyone. Darth Haster, Mark the Infinitely Tired, Day Bob, let's get spooky. Yeah. Luis Sparrow, good evening. Good evening, Luis. Oh, well, Gun Bunny. Good evening, Gun Bunny. All right. And
good
RTL,
evening, everybody.
Evening. Yes. Yes. How are you doing tonight, brother?
Oh, it's fun. Got my 2 sons who are mostly gone all the time. I'm taking care of my special needs. My wife is out of town with her sister. And in the process of moving the house, I had a bit busy. Phone call scheduling, this, and that, and the other. Just trying to keep up.
I bet you that's insane. Absolutely insane. But I'm so glad you guys are getting out of there, man.
Michigan's not the place to be anymore.
Wow, that sucks. But I know, I know from the look of everything is looking good.
Well, for on our end, yeah, everything's going to end up pretty well. So, yeah, things are going pretty good. Smaller house, but still, yeah, you saw pictures of it. It's a good place.
Yeah, it looks absolutely beautiful.
But, it's keeping me busy. Not so busy that I can't be here tonight. Not so busy that I didn't bring a little bit with me tonight as well.
Oh, snap. Well, I've got some pictures here.
Well, let's not worry about those just yet. I'm going to be selfish and do a little bookkeeping. I don't see her in the chat, but for those of you, I heard had an interesting little bit from Speaker from the Dead today. It was quite touching, and it reminded me. I think I had told her, but I wanted to make it sure and let you guys know publicly. Starry Eye girl is absolutely wonderful, and she sent me a Christmas card as well.
Oh, she is, isn't she? I got one too. Holy crap! Mine had a
and I wanted to publicly say thank you, and on the rebound, hopefully we can make her blush a little bit.
Oh yes. Did yours have a donkey on it too?
No.
Mine had a donkey and a kitty. It was absolutely cute as hell. A donkey and a kitty, because we've got a donkey here in Valhalla called Taco.
So, right. Well, I have to look at it again. I just I open it up, and I rarely look at the covers unless it has something really, silly or funny on it. So you can curse me and call me a pariah for not, but I read the message and shared it with my wife, and we both really appreciated it very much. I wanted to say public thank you for that. And no, I don't give out my address, so tough luck. The other thing is, we were just talking a minute ago, and I wanted to bring it up just because it was so impactful this morning. The cancel culture, some of the shows that we know and love, like The Expanse got hit. And I had put a thing in the comments, but I wanted to bring it up again. As frustrated as these things may be, or as frustrating as they may be, there is a way out for all of this. And the way out is, and I've brought this up on my own personal live stream. I don't know if it's still up or not. I was done real early on. And then I redid it with George Peter Getsis when he interviewed me for my book. But here's the key. If we keep settling for mediocrity, each successive generation is going to become less skilled, less talented, and clouded with more and more weaknesses and deficiencies until we become much, much weaker than what we really should be. And to pay for, to celebrate, or to lift up anything that is mediocre should not be in anyone's mind. If you need a brief entertainment or listen to some music that's average, okay. But to support, pay for, or pay some kind of homage to stuff that you know is garbage is wasting the entire set of humanity's time. And it is degrading the talents of those who exist in our world who are far, far better and are not getting the reach. I've often thought about setting up a music channel here on YouTube and just having those who want to participate who are very good at music and just play it 24/7 of stuff that doesn't hit the radio, but uncelebrated musicians, because you guys know I like music. But either way, I'm sorry for taking up our evening of mischief and going on to a tangent like that, but it was really important to me.
No. I completely agree. And I wanted to show something really quick before we get started, because Kronos is in the chat. Yes, I'm looking at you, Kronos. I wanted to share something I saw the other day.
Still not canceled.
Yeah, he's still not canceled now. I saw this and I had to pick it up. So I picked this up a couple of weeks ago. A Kronos.
Maximilian.
I have my own Kronos on my shelf. So I saw that a couple of weeks ago and said, you know what? Shit, I have to have him. And so I picked him up and yeah, I got my own Kronos sitting on my shelf. So now anytime I want to cancel him, I can just,
just throw him into the void. And you're right, Project Storytime, it goes with everything. If you were to take a 12th grader in our current set, even the past 10 years, and go back 100 years to their 12th graders and have them take tests side by side, it wouldn't even compare.
Nope. Anyway,
enough of that. What I did want to do tonight is, it's kind of related, and to something I you guys heard me talk about when I had almost drowned and I had that flash before my eyes, and I started thinking of, and I wanted to scare the bejeebies out of you, but I couldn't, not with this subject, but there are some dark aspects to it. And the homework I gave you last week with those images, I decided I'm going to save that for another time because it gets really, really bad and disgusting. And I personally, I'm not prepared to do that to you. And this one might be a little bit better this week. So usually when people have the flash before their eyes, there's a couple of different instances where it happens. The first time is when you are in a life-threatened or threatening, either way, situation where you feel in jeopardy of your life, and some people, when their life has already passed before they came back. There are tons and tons of books. There are lots of testimonials. There are thousands and thousands of people who, I don't need a huckleberry, sorry. Just step in line there, Mexican Iron Man. There are thousands of people who have claimed to have died, remember what happened, and came back. And I'm not getting religious today. Although those of you who are religious will find some commonality with some of the things that I bring up. And those of you who aren't, don't be insulted. I'm just giving you stories of people who have had experiences and what they claim. And I don't want to get into the ones that you guys are probably anticipating. I want to get into the ones where people didn't see the light, at least not at first, but they saw something else. Which brings me to a story of a woman. Her name is Angie Finnemore. And I'm going to read to you some of her story. And forgive me if I jump around or have issues. I'm quite tired and not exactly at the top of my game, but here we go. Angie Finnemore, a 27-year-old wife and mother, haunted by abuse in childhood and overwhelmed by despair. was in a desperate state of mind. On the 8th of January, 1991, Angie attempted to end her suffering by committing suicide. What ensued was a near-death experience that took her to the brink of hell. Okay. Her description: hell is a manner of suffering, and I was in hell long before I took my life. Where I went was just a manifestation of what I was already experiencing. I wanted so badly to just end my life and to be done. And what I found was that I took all of that with me, and it was multiplied, just intensified beyond anything that we can even have the power to understand in this life. And so, it was absolutely the worst thing that I could do. There was no escape. There were all kinds of mumbling to themselves, completely self-absorbed, caring nothing about anybody else, nothing about anyone else there, or about anything but themselves. What was going on was that these people were reliving their worst experiences over and over and over again, reliving the agony that they had and that they were in, this turmoil, whatever it was, that had caused each of them to take their own lives. I didn't get there because other people had done things to me. Instead, I had chosen not to overcome the things that were intentionally given to us, problems, things that we need to overcome so that we can grow. Basically, her story goes on that she was in a place that she understood was where those who commit suicide go. Now, again, this is one person's testimony, and I don't want you to generalize it for everybody. But what she saw, because none of us are in anyone else's shoes, and doesn't necessarily mean what she saw was right. But what she saw were an existence where all the people who wanted nothing to do with anything lived with nothing and nothing to do with anything, except the regrets of not overcoming their own weaknesses. She later went on to do other things, which I won't describe. Like I said, I don't want to get religious. That's for a different time. Now, there's another picture here. There's a picture. This one's a little bit longer. This one's more dramatic in a lot of ways. And like I said, I've gone through a lot of these experiences, and I just pulled out two that I wanted to share. This one is Howard Storm. He, you know what? I'm just going to read his words. I was a double atheist, says Howard, who became a tenured art professor at Northern Kentucky University by the age of 27. I was a know-it-all college professor, and universities are some of the most closed-minded places there are, and we all know that, of course. On the last day of the 3-week European art tour that he had led, his group had returned to their hotel in Paris after a visit to the artist Delacroix' home and studio. As Howard stood in his room with his wife and another student, suddenly he cramped and doubled over to the floor in agony. I had a perforation of the small stomach, also known as the duodenum. Well, that's not exactly a small stomach. You only have one stomach. That's a part of your intestines, but that's the doctor and me giving him a hard time. Anyway, here we go. He recalls, at first, Howard thought he was shot, and he glanced around the room to see if he could spot a smoking gun. As he writhed in pain on the ground, kicking and screaming, his wife called for a doctor. They said I needed surgery immediately, Howard says. It's like having a burst appendix. I was told that if they didn't get to it within 5 hours, You're probably going to die. Howard had the misfortune of falling ill on a Saturday in a country with socialized medicine, and no doctor could be found. French doctors do 7 surgeries a week, and after they do their 7 surgeries, they take the weekend off, he discovered. They placed him on a bed without sheets or pillow and offered no pain medication. He waited in the room for 10 hours. I was just lying there, going south, Howard says. Meanwhile, intestinal contents were leaking into his abdominal cavity, which would soon lead to peritonitis, septic shock, and certain death. At 8:30 p.m., a nurse came in and said they were still unable to find a doctor, but they would try to find one the next day, Sunday. I had been struggling very hard to stay alive, but when she said there was no doctor, I knew it was time to stop fighting, Howard says. Yet the thought of death scared him. I was terrified of dying because it meant lights out, the end of the story, he notes. It seemed horrible that a 38-year-old, when I felt powerful, successful in my life, it would all come to an end in such a ridiculously pitiful way. Howard made an impassioned farewell to his wife and told her to tell their friends and the rest of his family goodbye. Then he lost consciousness. It wasn't long after he lost consciousness that he had a very unusual out-of-body experience and found himself standing next to his bed, looking at himself lying there. As he stood there, he noticed he didn't feel the pain in his stomach. He felt more alive than ever, and his senses seemed more heightened than usual. He tried to communicate with his wife and the other man in the room, but they didn't respond, which was frustrating to him. I was glad I didn't have the pain, but also I was very confused and disturbed by the situation. I saw my body lying on the bed, but I refused to believe it was me. How could that be me if I was standing there? He wondered. Suddenly, he heard people outside the room calling for him by name. They spoke English without a French accent, which seemed strange because everyone in the hospital either spoke French or heavily accented English. "Come with us," they said. "Hurry up, let's go." Howard went to the doorway. "Are you from the doctor?" he asked. "I need to have a surgery. I'm sick, and I will be waiting a long time. Or I have been waiting a long time." "We know all about you," one said. "We have been waiting for you. It's time for you to go. Hurry up." Howard left the room and started to walk with them down a long hallway, which was very dimly lit, almost dingy. They took me on a very long journey through a gray space that got increasingly darker and darker, he recalls. They walked a long time, and Howard wondered why he was not tired when he had just suffered the worst day of his life. "Where are we going?" Howard asked. "How come it's taking so long? Where's the doctor? What's his name?" "Shut up," one said. "Be quiet," another said. "Don't ask questions." Howard's fear and apprehension grew at that same time he lost trust in his guides. Finally, it was so dark, I was terrified, and I said, "I am not going any further. I want to go back." "You're almost there," one replied. Howard dug his heels in. "I'm not going any further," he finally said. His guides began to push him and pull him. Howard fought back, but he was horribly outnumbered. We had a big fight, and the fight turned into them humiliating me, which they did slowly and with much relish, he said. Mostly they were biting and tearing at me. This went on for a long time. They did other things to humiliate and violate me, which I don't talk about. When Howard was no longer amusing to them, he collapsed on the ground, ripped apart, and unable to move. This is where it starts to get a little religious, but we got to end it. And this is an atheist talking, or was. He lay there motionless for a few moments, completely spent. Then he was surprised by a small voice inside his head that said, "Pray to God." He thought, "I don't pray, I don't believe in God." Then he heard the voice a second time, "Pray to God." But I wouldn't know how to pray even if I knew, or even if I wanted to, he thought. Whose voice was this? He wondered. It sounded like his voice, but the words were completely foreign to his thinking. Then he heard the voice of a third time repeat the same message. His mind drifted back into his days of Sunday school. He tried to remember how to say his prayers. Then he managed to blurt out a little bit of the Lord's Prayer. And then the voices from the darkness emerged again. "There is no God, and nobody can hear you," they cried out, along with other obscenities. "If you keep praying, we will really hurt you." Eventually, you can gather what the conclusion of that is. But I'm going to give you a general overview. These are multiple stories like this, or the ones that see the light, the one that see relatives. You've heard of children that visit with people that they didn't know who were grandparents or great-grandparents, and other people who go to these dark places, who visit these hellish places where there is no fire, there's no brimstone, there's no devil poking at you with a pitchfork, but just other miserable people. The reason why I bring it up is, with all the darkness around us here, is it worth it to you to internalize it? Or is it worth it to you to be with like-minded people who want for something, struggle for something, and fight for something better, who are around each other to try and lift each other up, to send them Christmas cards, and to take joy in other people's company, along with everything else? Like I said, I won't get religious. But the big thing is, and this goes along also with why I talked about early on what Loki's show in the morning, the universe exists in opposites. Some are small, some are grand, as dark, as weak-minded, as simple-minded, as evil and hellish as some people may be, or conniving to struggle for mediocrity and celebrate those things which are weak. Find time to celebrate, uplift, strengthen, and help those things to make everything better, stronger, so that us and successive, and the next generation will be better. And that's what I have for tonight. That's the best I can do.
Absolutely brilliant. That's not just all you had. That was absolutely brilliant. Thank you, brother. And no, we shouldn't settle on mediocrity, the middle of the road. Never settle. All right, guys, I am going to continue. If you, my part from last week, if you weren't here, the name of the story is "I Hunt Down the Government's Mistakes," and it is over on Creepypasta, and we are on part 3, codename Dahlia. We are reading about a gentleman that hunts down government mistakes, things that they have created, people that they have altered, monsters they have made. And our agent who hunts down these mistakes is now going after something named codename Dahlia. Dahlia is, well, a doll, a ventriloquist doll to be exact. Despite her simple looks, she's quite dangerous. Probably not in the way that most of you would expect, though. She can't move on her own. Well, she can speak, but that's it. So she won't be running around your home in the middle of the night stabbing people to death. No, instead, Dahlia has an incredibly strong power of influence. One look into her eyes, and she'll have complete control over you. It's a bit ironic, really, a ventriloquist doll making humans her puppets. In my briefing, I was told Dahlia is essentially the definition of sadistic. She enjoys making her victims inflict as much pain as possible before eventually disposing of them. I'm not sure if demons are real, but if they are, I'm sure that's what is trapped inside that doll. Dahlia was believed to be staying with a family of 4. She had been taken there by a scientist who had fallen under her control. She'd only been gone about a week, but there's no telling what she could have gotten up to in that time. The scientist who had taken her had returned to her workplace a day later and attempted to murder her coworkers, but was quickly taken care of. I made my way to the family's home, hoping to be surprised by what I saw. Let's just say I got my wish, but not in the way I'd hoped. I knocked on the front door. After a few minutes of no response, I turned the handle to find the door was unlocked. I wish I hadn't. The moment I stepped into the home, I was hit with a putrid smell, one that I knew, one that meant death. The walls were coated in blood. Some of it was dried, some fresh, and still slowly dripping down. I found the family together in the living room. The mother and 2 children were sat in a small triangle. They were already dead, rotting. Their stomachs had been cut open, with their entrails hanging out. They had been posed in a way to make it look as if they were eating their own organs. In the center of that triangle was the father, hanging from the ceiling, and had scratches and cuts all across his face. But that was nothing compared to what happened to his family. Just before I was about to spill my lunch all over the floor, I heard a voice from the opposite corner of the room. "You're just in time. What do you think of my little art project? It's a bit sloppy, but I'm sure it will get better in time," the voice said. "Dahlia?" I asked. "Aw, have you come to get me already? I was having such a fun time, too. Well, I'm done here. I guess you can take me back now. I'll be out again soon." I made my way over to the voice, making sure to keep my head down. I had no intention of ending up like the family. When I got close, I closed my eyes and managed to pick her up and flip her over and make my way back to my vehicle. "Let me sit up front. I like to have conversations during my car rides. Plus, you can't get much action from women in this line of work, so it'll be a little fun for both of us," Dahlia said mockingly. As much as I wanted to chunk her in the back and throw a blanket or something over her, I also didn't want her to be out of my line of sight, so I granted her wish. I carefully sat her up front, turning her head towards the window. I'd be lying if I said a part of me wasn't curious about her. I wanted to know more about what makes this monster, well, a monster. "You should just take me home with you. Tell your boss I wasn't here. I'm sure we could have lots of fun together," Dahlia said. "Yes, I'm sure you would make a great kindling for a fire," I responded. "You're funny. I like you. I was thinking I'd have someone kill you eventually, but maybe I'll keep you." "Oh, you just don't kill everyone?" I asked. "Oh, of course not. I like to let the really bad ones go. It's more fun that way." "What do you mean by that? Are you saying I'm a bad person?" That had made me a bit angry. I'd almost turned to look at Dahlia, but I thought better of it. Was she trying to provoke me? "You aren't quite on my level yet, but I see potential in you, boy. You didn't even scream when you saw my work. Maybe you even enjoyed seeing it. You may think we are different, but we really aren't," Dahlia retorted. She was pretty right. I hadn't reacted when I saw the bodies. I'd felt sick, but if I had seen that a few months ago, I probably would have passed out. Whether I liked it or not, I definitely was changing. And I don't think it was for the good. "What are you?" I finally asked after a few minutes of silence. "Look into my eyes and I'll tell you." "Nice try. I may be stupid, but I'm not that stupid," I responded, almost bursting out in the laughter. "What are you so afraid of? Do you think you would see yourself if you looked into my eyes?" That's enough. One more word, and I'm Googling where the nearest wood chipper is. Those were the last words I spoke on our little road trip together. I dropped off Dahlia and informed them about the mess at the house. They said they would send someone to clean it up. I was hoping they would give me a break after what I'd seen, but I wouldn't be so lucky. As soon as I turned in Dahlia, they told me they already had a new assignment ready for me. That would be codenamed Jack. Grandiose name, I know. This was probably the oddest assignment I had received yet, though. Jack was, from what I could tell, entirely human. I had no clue why I'd been tasked with finding a human. Perhaps he was a runaway scientist or someone who knew too much, but he certainly wasn't what I had gotten used to hunting. I was told Jack was incredibly dangerous, though, and I shouldn't take any chances in trying to capture him alive. In other words, dead. Not live, but dead. This only made me more curious as to what secrets Jack must have held. Jack was constantly on the move, so it wasn't easy to find him, but my training had paid off, and I was eventually able to track him down. I watched him for a few. He didn't seem dangerous to me. Suspicious and cautious, yes, but not dangerous in the slightest. One night, he stepped out of his hotel room to get food, so I decided to let myself in. Jack and I needed to have a little talk. Jack didn't seem too surprised when he returned to his room to find me sitting on the couch. He simply held out his arms. So they did send someone after me after all. Well, go ahead and do what you have to. I won't bite it. Sit down. Jack raised an eyebrow at this. Curious one, huh? You know what they say about curiosity, right? I rolled my eyes and once again motioned for Jack to sit down. Who are you, Jack? Why did they send me after you? You don't know. I'm you. Or at least I used to be you. They tell us where to go, who to kill, who to bring back, and we do it. No questions asked. I couldn't do it anymore, though. So here I am, and here you are, Jack explained. This took me back for a second. I had known he had had some kind of connection to my agency, but I had never considered he had been in the same position as me. So there really was no way out other than death. I walked across the room, pulled out my gun, and I shot Jack. I had the answers I came here for. Perhaps Dahlia was right. We aren't so different after all. I returned with Jack's body. I wasn't asked to give my usual debriefing. Instead, I was just given a simple nod, told to go home and wait for my next assignment. I wondered if this was another test. If it had been, I'm sure I passed with flying colors. I understand if you all think less of me for the choices I've made. But if it wasn't me, it would be someone else. This was the life I chose. Perhaps the life that was chosen for me. Regardless, I couldn't back out now. I'm simply one discardable person in the whole scheme of things. Don't mistake my actions for blind loyalty, though. I know the people I work for aren't good people. I simply know my place in the world. And the minute I stop being useful, I will end up like little old Jack. How does the saying go? Better the devil you know than the devil you don't. I'm a cog in a giant machine, and once my cog stops working, I will be discarded and replaced by another. Despite the fact I risk death every day that I wake up, I have never felt more alive than I do today. I no longer have nightmares of those I've killed. I've stopped caring about things like that. If I become too soft, then I will end up like Jack, and I have no intentions of letting that happen. After I disposed of good old Jack, I was given a week off. It had been a while since I had any time to myself. It was strange. I never had many friends, and my work had distanced me from the few family members I'd kept in touch with. This week off made me realize just how empty my life was. Was this what they had wanted? Regardless, I was at work the minute my week was up, ready for my next assignment, and I got one. Codename Mimic. As her name implies, Mimic is a master of disguise. She has the ability to morph her face into a perfect replica of anyone she chooses, but she is unable to change her body. And I imagine she's still a work in progress. Can you imagine what the government could do if they could create perfect body doubles of anyone they wanted? Mimic had escaped with a few other experiments, but she was the top priority. It was believed that they had all split up, but I was still warned to be on the lookout in case any of them teamed up. Due to her ability, Mimic would be incredibly difficult to locate. Because of this, several hunters like me were given her as an assignment. If our information was correct, then she had not made it out of the city we live in yet. But if she had, we would never find her. The only way we would be able to identify her is by a distinct scar on her left shoulder. The government had set up roadblocks at all the city's exits while us hunters searched from within. 3 other hunters and myself were each given a quadrant to search. Mimic had no family, so she would either have to break into somewhere or find an abandoned location to stay. I spent several hours walking the streets of my quadrant, asking strangers if they had seen a suspicious-looking woman, as well as checking out old, decrepit homes that hadn't been lived in years. I found nothing, though. That was until I was approached by a slender, young-looking man, probably in his early 20s. Are you looking for someone? The man asked. Yeah, it's hard to explain. I'm looking for a girl, but I'm not entirely sure what she looks like. Aren't we all? The man chuckled before continuing. But I may be able to help you. I saw a girl run into an old building around the corner. She was acting weird, constantly looking over her shoulder. Maybe she's who you're looking for. Thank you. I have to go check right now, I said as I pushed past the man, not giving his words a second thought. Quickly made my way to the building and let myself in. To my amazement, Mimic was actually there. But it wasn't quite what I expected. Mimic was tied to a chair. I knew it was her because her scar was in clear view. No other hunters had contacted me to tell me they had moved into my area or that they had found Mimic, so why was she tied up? That's when I remembered who told me that I could find her here. Before I could even turn around, I heard his voice. It's a gift. She's quite important to them, isn't she? It's this strange young man I had just met, but he wasn't behind me. No, he was in front of me, near Mimic. How had he gotten in front of me? Almost sprinted over. Who are you? I asked. That's not important right now. Aren't you going to thank me? Oh, wait, that's not important either. The real reason I'm here is to deliver a message to you, the man said. A message from who? I was truly perplexed, as I had said earlier. I made contact with almost no one. Don't look so confused, friend. It's from your girlfriend. Have you already forgotten her? Dahlia would be so upset to hear that, the man mockingly replied. I immediately cut him off. Dahlia is not my girlfriend. Dahlia is a demonic doll that I want nothing to do with, unless it involves a large fire, I almost said, shouting. The man laughed. She said you would say something like that. Regardless, she just wants you to know that she's coming to pick you up soon and that she really misses you. Now, if you'll excuse me. The man turned and began to walk away. Where do you think you're going? I said as I pulled out my tranq gun and aimed it at him. He didn't respond, nor did he stop walking, so I fired. My aim was dead on. Well, it would have been. But the dart passed right through the man, as if he wasn't even there. He continued walking straight up to a wall and walked right through it. What the hell just happened? A man appears out of nowhere, leads me to Mimic, and then he tells me that Dahlia is coming to pick me up. To top it off, there's obviously something going on with the guy too, seeing how he knew Dahlia, but also the fact that objects passed directly through his body. I didn't know what the hell was going on, but I still had a job to do, and my target was right in front of me. Let the other hunters know that I had found the target, then I was taking her back. That's what I did. I brought Mimic back to my bosses. I was almost expecting some sort of praise, but I knew that would be unlikely despite her value. I would be surprised once again when I made it back to the holding facility. The whole place was in complete lockdown. Well, whatever was able to be locked down. Half of the building was gone. The facility was located outside of town in a secluded area for obvious reasons. So I knew no innocent people had died, but I did see the corpses of many scientists and guards strewn around the area. It had been an explosion. I knew some of them had families. These people weren't angels. I managed to find one of my superiors who was able to briefly fill me in on the situation. While our forces had been thin looking for Mimic, a group had attacked the facility. It's obvious they were looking for a particular experiment, but unsure exactly who they were after at this point. Around 20 of the 50 experiments held in this facility had escaped. I tried asking which of the experiments escaped, but I was told that was confidential. They simply told me to leave Mimic with them and to go home and wait for them to sort this out. Part of me already knows at least one of the experiments who escaped. Was she the target? I think it's a big possibility. I was already told she was coming for me. Not sure what's about to happen, but whatever it is, it can't be good. It had been a few days since the attack on the facility. I was temporarily sent home while the government sorted out the mess. Without the building blown off, it wouldn't do much good to start hunting down experiments before we had a place to store them. We'd find them eventually. I was able to sleep for about 4 hours before my phone rang. It was time to hunt down the escapees. 4 hunters total, including myself, had helped look for Mimic. We were all called in. We were given a short list of the experiments that had escaped. To my dismay, Dahlia was in fact on the list. She couldn't move on her own, so it was clear she was with one of the other experiments. Which one, though, I had no clue. I tried flipping through the pages to see if the man I had seen with Mimic was on the list, but he wasn't. We were able to find about half of the 20 escapees on the first day. Some of the experiments just stand out a bit too much, and with no one to help them on the outside, they're just sitting ducks. There were still 11 at large, though, Dahlia, of course, among them. I kept hoping every time we found a new lead that they would be the one carrying Dahlia, but unfortunately, that wasn't the case. After doing a quick sweep of the nearby city with no new results, we were all sent home to rest. The government would go through cameras and contact us if they found anything. They were also calling in reinforcements after the attack, trying to find out who orchestrated this. There was absolutely no way I was going home with a killer doll stalking me, though. Instead, I made sure that I wasn't being followed, parked my car in a random street, found a small motel. It was a crappy rundown place, but that oddly made it feel safer. I slept with my lethal gun in hand and my tranq gun nearby. I knew I wouldn't be able to sleep much, but it would only be worse for me if Dahlia did come. I was too exhausted to fight back. The night went by with no incidences, though. I was called in early the next morning. It turns out 2 experiments had been spotted together. They had stolen a car and were en route to leave the city. People back at the facility would slow them down as much as possible with spotlights. They wanted me and another one of the hunters to meet up and follow them, possibly lead us to more if the escaped convicts. I was able to quickly meet up with one of the hunters. He was probably mid-30s, so he'd probably been doing this a lot longer than I had. Luckily, we were able to catch sight of the stolen vehicle just before it left town, despite knowing they had been slowed down. It all seemed too easy. The car started taking back roads and eventually pulled into an old cabin. Despite us being the only car behind it most of the time, it didn't seem to show any unusual behavior as to suggest it knew we were following it. The other hunter pulled over a short distance from the cabin and began to ready himself. I pulled out my phone. I saw a trap. I thought that maybe I could call backup, but the other hunter stopped me. Listen, kid, I've been doing this shit a long time. I know this is probably a trap, but you really think they are going to send anybody to fucking help us? We're on our own. You can either help me, you can sit your ass out here and wait. I'm going in. Well then, after you, I suppose, I replied coldly. I knew he was probably right, though. The government didn't care. They didn't give a shit about us. They'd probably have us just scolded me and asked what I was waiting for. So I began to gear up as well. Death might be favorable compared to whatever Dahlia wanted me to do anyway. The other hunter and I exited the vehicle and made our way as sneakily as is possible in daylight. Once we made it to the door, the hunter gave a countdown of 3 before throwing some sort of grenade through the front window. It exploded into gas, quickly filling the home. I couldn't help but wonder why I had never been given access to this before. After the gas had mostly dispersed, we covered our noses with our shirts and went inside. We sleep found one of the experiments unconscious on the floor. If I remember correctly, her code name was Trauma. By touching someone, she could force them to see their worst nightmares. I guess since waterborne is too inhumane, she must be the solution. The other hunter began to make his way over to her, and he began restraining her while I watched his back. He was almost done when everything went dark. When I came to, I saw the other hunter was tied in a chair in front of me. He was still unconscious, and I looked down to see I was in the same situation. I was firmly tied to a chair. "Ah, you're finally awake," a male voice said to my side. I turned to look. It was the man from before, the one that had walked through the wall. He was also sat in a chair, but he wasn't tied up. I doubt any sort of bindings could hold him anyway. On his lap sat a doll. The doll had a hood pulled up just enough to cover its eyes. The man began to speak again. "It's actually a bit funny. Last time we met, I gave you someone tied up in a chair, and now you're tied up. What do you want?" I replied, not in the mood for any games, nor that I had much choice. "I told you, Dahlia here was coming to pick you up, but instead you came to see her yourself. How sweet of you," the man said. "Did you really miss me that much?" Dahlia finally spoke. "Can you just kill me already or do whatever you're going to do with me? I'm really sick of this bullshit," I responded. "I told you, I let the bad ones live. And you have been quite bad recently, killing that poor man Jack. It was a bit fast, don't you think? But I'm sure you enjoyed it," Dahlia said, mocking me. "I just did what I was told. He knew what he signed up for." "Yes. Oh, yes, he did. The rest of us are not so fortunate, though. All of our lives were turned into games by the government. The only difference between us is that you had a choice. The rest of the experiments and myself never had the luxury of knowing what we were getting into," Dahlia said. "So what? You want to overthrow the government? Expose them? Is that what you want?" Dahlia started to laugh. "Oh, heavens, no. They are far too powerful for that, and there are too few of us to even think about challenging them. I simply don't care enough about something like that. No, I want you." "What do you want from me? I've done terrible things, but I'm still nothing like you." "Maybe not yet, but you will be. Oh, yes, you will be." After she said this, two new people entered the room. They were both wearing lab coats. One held a syringe, and once he reached me, he plunged it into my arm. Once again, the world went black. I woke again to find myself looking at two bodies. One was the other hunter. The other was mine. Both had a bullet hole in the head. How is this possible? Am I dead? How am I still seeing this if I'm dead? I wasn't trapped in a doll. I still appeared to be human. I touched my face and the rest of my body. I still felt solid. I was still capable of picking things up. Why the hell was my body dead on the floor? It's incredible, isn't it? Looks just like you, even down to the fingerprints. One of the experiment's abilities. The other one isn't a replica, though. He's quite dead and done with you. You killed him, by the way, with your own gun. This came from the boys to the ghost-like man before. What did you do to me? I asked. I knew they had to have done something. The man simply shrugged. Nothing. It seems as your body rejected the serum they had planned for you. Rejected? Well, at least that was one thing to be happy about, although I was still stuck in a room with one of my captors, as well as a dead body and the replica of my own dead body. What now, then? I asked, even though I wasn't sure I'd get a direct answer. Since the serum didn't work, Dahlia has one last plan for you. As he said this, the door opened once more. Dahlia was brought back into the room by trauma, this time with no hood. I was no longer tied up, but I knew there was still no way for me to escape, not yet. So I stood still as Trauma approached me with Dahlia in hand. Once Trauma stood directly in front of me, I crouched down and looked directly into Dahlia's eyes. I wouldn't fight this. What I saw in those eyes was pure evil. I saw war, murders, death, suicides, endless tragedy. I didn't lose control, though. Instead, I quickly reached for the lighter that I had been hiding in my shoe ever since I knew Dahlia had escaped. I flicked it almost instantly and held it to Dahlia's dress. She went up in a blaze. There was no stopping the fire. Trauma and the strange man desperately tried to put it out, but it was as if Dahlia had been soaked in gasoline. I took a second to smile before sprinting out the door. I saw several people on my way out of the house, but none of them seemed concerned with me. They all were trying to get to the room with Dahlia. I knew the whole cabin would be alight soon, so I just needed to get out. Once I made it outside, I quickly ran to where the hunter's car had been parked. It was surprisingly still there. I hadn't moved it, but he still had the key. So I smashed the window and hot-wired the car as quickly as possible and sped off. By the time I drove by, the fire in the cabin was massive. I almost hoped that all those inside would be dead. They had all been under Dahlia's control. It's possible there were some good people among them. I let the thought die instead as I continued to go forward. I've been hiding out ever since that day. I know writing this only puts me in more danger, but this story needed to be out there. It's almost guaranteed the government will read this. Perhaps they will send someone after me. But I don't care anymore. I won't be a puppet. Not to Dahlia. Not to the government. Not to anyone. I'm officially done hunting down the government's mistakes.
Couldn't ask for a better ending on that one.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love that when I read it. Guys, I read these one time. I do a quick read over one time and then read them out here. So I absolutely love getting to do this every week, get to hang out with Adega and do something like this. Next week we'll have more. If you guys want like a full version of that, I'm sure I can find a way to like stream it all together and get it all together into one story. So thank you, Adega, for hanging out. Thank you for sharing everything earlier. Absolutely kick ass. And I can't wait till next Thursday.
It's always a highlight. Always is. And you don't need to thank me. I'm thanking you. Every week you hear the same thing. Thank you for letting me share a little bit of my madness.
And if you guys will give me 1 second, I know I've got some super chats to catch up on. Some people were very kind enough to throw some super chats out, and I'm going to catch up with those right now. Give me 1 second. We have got a $10 super chat from Mexican Iron Man. How many Dr. Adega huckleberries does it take to create cold fusion? Answer: none. He is able to will it with his blue ring and mental acumen. Thank you so much for that $10 super chat, Mexican Iron Man. Skol!
Skol!
Thank you so very much. We've got a $5 super chat from Psychodorf9. I've seen high school texts from the 1920s easily beat out modern college level. And another $5 super chat from Psychodorf9. Friends are the family you choose. I choose to be among y'all. Damn straight.
Absolutely.
Psychodorf9. Hell yes, brother. And thank you so much for both of those super chats. Skol!
Spartans! What is your profession?
Ladies and gentlemen, tomorrow morning we are going to be going over the great director Robert Rodriguez and his films. So if you can make it tomorrow morning, that is exactly what we are going to be talking about. I've got some news for Monday tomorrow too. So guys, check out tomorrow, Monday morning or Friday morning, and I'll have some info about what we're going to do Monday. We are going to have a kick-ass guest on Monday. Should be crazy. I'll just go ahead. We're going to have Lethal Lightning on, folks. So talking about Mass Effect on Monday. So check us out tomorrow morning. We will be back. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for being here. You all have a wonderful night, and we will catch you guys next time on 7 Kinds of Mischief.
Good night.
if I can get us out of here. Holy shit.
These videos are tremendous. Like, comment, and subscribe, and hammer that notification bell.